April 2nd is not approaching like an ordinary full moon. This is the biblical pink moon. The moment it reaches fullness, many of you will realize you were never simply moving through another week of your life. You are being led toward a threshold, a sacred edge between the old self that survived and the new self that is finally ready to be born. Do not ignore what your spirit has been feeling these last few days. This moon does not arrive gently. It arrives like ancient light pouring through a doorway that has remained sealed for months, maybe years. The threshold is already beneath your feet. You may have felt it as emotional pressure, strange silence, vivid dreams, sudden fatigue, unexpected tears, a pull toward solitude, or the sensation that something unseen is preparing to open. That feeling is real. This is not random sensitivity. This is activation before rebirth. The biblical pink moon has always carried the symbolism of sacred resurrection, renewal after endings, and the kind of divine timing that forces the soul to choose whether it will remain inside familiar pain or cross into a life that finally reflects its truth. That is why the threshold matters so deeply now. A threshold is never only a doorway. It is the moment between identities, final breath, before the old chapter loses its hold. The line between who you became to survive and who you are now being asked to become in order to receive, and many of you have been standing at this line longer than you realize. For weeks, perhaps since the beginning of March, your life may have felt suspended, plans delayed, emotions heavier, people quieter, signals mixed. Your intuition louder at night than during the day. Some of you have been feeling an ache in the chest that no conversation fully explained. Others have felt throat tightness, interrupted sleep, sudden emotional exhaustion, or a sense that your soul is waiting for permission your mind cannot yet define. This was the preparation phase, because before a threshold opens, life often becomes strangely narrow. The old rooms begin to feel smaller. Conversations that once comforted you start sounding hollow. Work that once felt stable begins draining more energy than it gives. Even the way certain people text, speak, or show up may have started feeling emotionally thinner. That narrowing is not punishment, it is spiritual architecture. The universe often compresses the old reality before revealing the new doorway. Because rebirth requires contrast. You must feel what no longer fits before you are ready to step toward what does, and this pink moon is that moment. This is why the first ritual matters. Before the 2nd of April, the first ritual is threshold clearing. Tonight, or the night before the full moon, stand in the doorway of your room, your home, or any physical threshold that feels meaningful. Pause there intentionally. Do not rush this. Feel the symbolism. One side of you belongs to the version of yourself that carried confusion mixed signals, scarcity thinking, old grief, delayed choices, and emotional overextension. The other side belongs to the self now, ready for sacred receiving as you stand there. Speak aloud what cannot cross with you. Say the fear, say the name of the old wound, say the habit of chasing, say the belief that made you settle, say the version of yourself that keeps waiting for proof. Before trusting inner truth, then physically step across. The ritual works because your body must participate in the rebirth. Not only your mind, and this is where many viewers will begin feeling the activation immediately. You may notice a deep exhale after the step, sudden calm, tears, a wave of heat through the chest, tingling in the hands, goosebumps, a strange stillness in the room. The threshold ritual makes the unseen shift visible to the nervous system. This is especially powerful for Pisces, Libra, and Capricorn because these signs are standing closest to major life thresholds right now. Pisces, your threshold is emotional and spiritual. You are crossing from longing into trust. The room behind you contains old illusions, over-idealization, and the tendency to confuse emotional depth with destiny. This moon activates sacred discernment. Libra, your threshold is relational. You're stepping beyond the version of yourself that negotiated your standards downward just to keep harmony. The doorway ahead is balance without self-erasure. Capricorn, your threshold is structural. Career, status, responsibility, money systems, and long-term stability are being rewritten. Under this moon, you are being asked whether the life you've built still matches the soul now emerging, and this leads into the second ritual, which may be even more powerful. The second ritual is the vessel ritual. Take a glass bowl, silver dish, or a clear cup of water, and place it under moonlight before the 2nd of April. Water is essential because the pink moon is not only illuminating the sky, it is illuminating emotional memory. Water becomes the vessel of what your spirit is finally ready to release and receive. Sit with the water in silence. This is where the threshold becomes internal. Look into the water as if it were a sacred mirror, and ask what chapter is ended. But I have not emotionally accepted what truth am I standing at the edge of what am. I afraid to receive because it would require a new identity do. Not force answers. Let the body respond first. You may feel heaviness in the throat. A memory may return. A specific person may enter your mind. Financial fear may suddenly become obvious. You may realize the real threshold is not external at all, but the point where your self-worth becomes strong enough to stop negotiating with what drains you. That is the rebirth this moon is pushing financially. Many of you are standing at a threshold around value exchange. The pink moon exposes where generosity became depletion, where loyalty became overwork, and where patience became avoidance of necessary decisions. Some of you will realize you are undercharging. Others will recognize that your money habits still belong to an older identity shaped by fear instead of expansion. The threshold question becomes, does your current financial structure belong to the life ahead, or the survival self behind you? That question changes everything. Because abundance under this moon is not about random luck. It is about crossing the threshold from scarcity patterns into conscious receiving. This can look like renegotiating your rates, protecting your time, saying no to draining collaborations, moving money into safer structures, or finally trusting the long-term investment your future self has been asking for, and the body will tell you. When this truth lands, the biblical pink moon is especially strong in the physical system, because rebirth is never only spiritual. Many of you may feel unusual fatigue, thirst, sleep disruption between 2 and 4 a.m., tense dreams, pressure behind the eyes, jaw tightness, or emotional waves that seem to rise without obvious cause. Do not dismiss this. The threshold is somatic. Your nervous system is learning the shape of the new life before your outer reality fully catches up. Hydrate more than usual before the full moon. Reduce unnecessary noise. Protect your sleep. Avoid overstimulation. Spend time near water if possible. Let the body release through tears. Breath, silence, and stillness. The body crossing the threshold is what makes the rebirth durable. And now we arrive at the relationship threshold, where this pink moon becomes deeply personal. For many of you, love has been the exact place where the threshold kept appearing. The repeated lesson, the same emotional pattern in different faces, the same silence, the same mixed signals, the same hope that this time the outcome would finally become different. But the biblical pink moon exposes the sacred line between longing and truth. Some of you are realizing the threshold is the moment you stop mistaking chemistry for alignment. Others are seeing that the relationship itself is not ending, only the old way you participated in it. This is why the third ritual is the most emotionally powerful of all. The third ritual is the name at the threshold. Write one name on paper. This can be the name of a person, a fear, a past version of yourself, an old identity, a scarcity belief, or even a dream you know has expired. Place that paper at a doorway threshold. Stand over it and ask, does this belong in the life I am crossing into? If the answer in your body is no, burn it safely. Tear it or remove it from the doorway before stepping forward. This ritual is profound because it forces truth into action, and once action enters, the rebirth begins. This is where everything becomes more personal for Pisces, Libra, and Capricorn. But before we go into the deepest sign-specific activations, you must understand what the threshold will reveal in the final hours before 2 April. because the signs from the universe become sharper right before the moon peaks. And what shows up next may be the exact confirmation you have been waiting for, as the final hours before. The 2nd of April 2026 approach. The threshold becomes impossible to ignore. This is the strange thing about powerful moons like this. The closer the light comes to fullness, the more reality itself begins revealing contrast. What belongs in your future starts feeling calmer, clearer, and strangely easier to breathe around. What does not belong begins creating friction in the body. The room feels tighter, the chest feels heavier. Certain conversations suddenly sound empty. Old fears begin speaking louder because they know the doorway is about to close behind you. This is why the threshold motif is not only symbolic, it becomes psychological. The mind may try to pull you backward right before the rebirth. Doubt often gets louder right before truth becomes permanent. You may suddenly question your decision, romanticize an expired connection, second-guess a money move, or feel tempted to return to the exact emotional pattern this pink moon came to end. Do not mistake this for failure. This is the final test of the threshold. The old identity always makes one last attempt to survive. That is why this moon is biblical in feeling. It carries the emotional signature of crossing from one reality into another with no guarantee except inner knowing. The old life behind you may still feel familiar. The future ahead may still be partially unseen, but sacred rebirth has never required full visibility. It requires willingness, and now the message becomes personal. Pisces, the threshold between fantasy and sacred truth. Pisces. This pink moon touches the most delicate and powerful layer of your life, the threshold, between what you dreamed and what is actually aligned. For months, maybe longer, your heart may have been living in two realities at once. One reality was built from longing, intuition, symbolism, and the stories your soul wanted to believe. The other was built from behavior, timing, and what life has actually been showing you. This full moon becomes the sacred line where those two realities can no longer overlap. The rebirth for Pisces is emotional honesty. You are crossing out of spiritualized confusion and into clear knowing. That may show up through a relationship truth, a financial realization, or a dream that suddenly reveals what your intuition has been whispering all along. The threshold asks you to stop feeding what only survives inside imagination, in love. Pisces, this is huge. Some of you will realize the connection you kept idealizing was actually a lesson in boundaries. Others will feel the opposite. A relationship becomes real because the illusion phase finally ends, and authentic emotional maturity begins. The power is not in whether something stays or leaves. Power is in whether it can survive the threshold of truth. Financially, Pisces, you are also being reborn through trust. Scarcity thinking may have kept you holding too tightly, hesitating on the right opportunity, or emotionally attaching to unstable financial sources. This moon asks you to step through the threshold into faith supported by structure, the chapter. Ending is emotional fog. The chapter beginning is sacred discernment. And once you feel the peace of clarity, you will never want confusion again, Libra. The threshold of self-respect. This biblical pink moon feels almost tailor-made for your soul. The threshold for you is not only relational, it is identity itself. You have spent enough time reading rooms, balancing energies, softening truths, and making yourself easier to hold so others remain comfortable. But this moon places you directly at the sacred line between people-pleasing and soul alignment. This is your rebirth. The threshold asks one direct question. What version of your life begins the moment your standards stop moving? That question is life-changing in love. Many Libras will feel this as a defining conversation. Truth you have been carrying silently finally asks to be spoken. You may recognize that the issue was never lack of love, but the threshold where love must now meet. Reciprocity. If the connection cannot cross that line, the moon has already answered what comes next. Career and money are just as significant. This pink moon may reveal how often harmony made you undercharge, avoid negotiations, or stay too long inside professional roles that no longer reflect your worth. The threshold is asking you to choose fair exchange over emotional comfort. The cycle ending is self-abandonment for peace. The life beginning is elegance rooted in truth. In Libra, once you cross this threshold, your nervous system will become highly sensitive to imbalance. That sensitivity is not weakness. It is your new standard. Capricorn, the threshold of legacy Capricorn. This is one of the most structurally powerful moons you will feel this year. The threshold is not emotional chaos for you. It is architectural. The life you've built through discipline, sacrifice, reliability, and long-range planning is now being measured against the soul emerging beneath it. This pink moon asks whether your outer success still reflects your inner becoming. That question can change everything. Some Capricorns will feel this in career. A major decision about work, authority, status, leadership, or long-term contracts may suddenly become obvious. What once looked stable may now feel spiritually expensive. What once felt risky may now feel like the only authentic threshold left. Others will feel this in family roles and responsibilities. Where have you become the structure everyone depends on? Where has control replaced emotional presence?
Where has
strength turned into silent overfunctioning? The rebirth for Capricorn is not loss of control. It is conscious redesign. Financially, this may be one of your strongest activation points. Investments, land, savings, home decisions, business structures, or wealth strategies may now require crossing into a more aligned blueprint. The threshold is asking whether your systems are built for fear or for legacy. The cycle ending is survival. Through rigidity, the chapter opening is wealth through conscious balance in Capricorn. This may become the moon that changes not just your year, but the next decade of your life architecture. Now the final teaching of this pink moon reaches everyone, regardless of sign. The threshold does not reward hesitation forever. At some point, the doorway closes behind the old version of you, not as punishment, but as protection. Once the truth becomes clear, trying to return to confusion creates far more pain than moving forward into the unknown. That is why your actionable guidance over the next 24 hours matters so deeply. Slow everything down before reacting emotionally. Ask whether the reaction belongs to the self behind the threshold or the self already stepping forward. Protect your money from emotional decisions. Do not chase anyone whose energy becomes warm only when distance appears. Drink more water before. Sleep. Write what you are ready to leave behind. Stand at a doorway before midnight and consciously choose the life ahead. Observe what your body relaxes around. Trust what feels structurally clean. Watch behavior, not beautiful promises. Most importantly, do not drag expired identities across sacred thresholds. This moon is not asking you to become someone else. It is asking you to finally stop postponing who you already are. And this is the final blessing of the biblical pink moon. Rebirth is rarely loud in the beginning. Sometimes it begins as relief, the relief of finally knowing, the relief of no longer over-explaining, the relief of recognizing that the old pain only survived because you kept revisiting the room it lived in. The threshold was never your fear. The threshold was your invitation. And now, under this biblical pink moon before the 2nd of April 2026, the doorway is open, the rituals are complete. And the soul that steps forward now carries different standards, different timing, and a future built on sacred truth instead of survival memory. If this message found you exactly when your life feels on the edge of irreversible change, trust that you were not being delayed. You were being positioned at the threshold till the exact moonlight strong enough to reveal the doorway arrived. Now, it is cross carefully, cross consciously, but above all, cross